Recently at Jump Festa 2024, it was announced that a Hunter x Hunter fighting game is on its way from developer Aiding, who's worked on past fighting games such as Marvel vs. Capcom 3, DNF Duel, and Battle Stadium Dawn. No further details are known at the moment, so I figured it would be fun to predict the game's character roster. So I'm going to run through the majority of Hunter x Hunter characters and see which ones are likely to make it in the game, and ultimately end with a final roster of 20 characters. Before we get started, let me explain how I'm going to go through this. I'm going to categorize each character in one of 6 categories. Guaranteed, there's no way they aren't in the game. Very likely, they're practically guaranteed. Likely, they have a good chance to make it in. Possible, neither likely nor unlikely, it's simply possible that they'd be in the game. Unlikely, more unlikely than likely. Very likely, yeah, they're not going to make it in the game. And finally, impossible. They just have no chance to make it. I'm going to determine the category by looking at plot relevancy, as well as abilities shown on screen and moveset potential. I'm also going to go in order of story arcs, so let's start with the Hunter exam. The first 3 characters are the most obvious: Gon, Killua, and Kurapika, which are all guaranteed. I don't really think anyone can disagree with that. However, there's a slight chance that the last of the 4 main characters won't make it, that being Leorio. The only reason I'm doubtful is because Jump Force had multiple Hunter x Hunter characters besides Leorio who are arguably less relevant than him. I'm assuming due to a lack of abilities showcased throughout the series, but I do think he's important enough to the story to not get axed from the game. That being said, there's a hint of doubt, so he's not going in guaranteed, he's going to go in very likely instead. Our next character is Hisoka, who is also guaranteed. He was in Jump Force's base roster, he's a fan favorite, and he showcased many different abilities throughout the series, so he's easily guaranteed. Next is another guarantee with Netara. He's an important figure in the Hunter exam arc, but the main reason I'm including him in guaranteed is because of his role in the Chimera Ant arc and because of his fight with Meruem. Next we have 3 examiners: Satots, Menchi, and Buhara. All of them are going in very unlikely. It's possible to make a moveset for each of them, but I don't see any reason to do so considering how little they impact the plot. Next we have some examinees, starting with Hanzo, who's going impossible. He hasn't showcased too many abilities, but we do know of his ninja background, which could make for an interesting moveset, but the main reason he's this high up is because of his fight with Gon at the end of the exam. Now we have Tonpa, who is unlikely. He never showed off any fighting ability, but I think he could work as a joke character, which is why he's in unlikely, but I don't think he has much chance of getting in. Pakal is going impossible. I think out of all the extra examinees, Pakal has the highest chance of getting in because of his Nen ability, which is showcased in the Chimera Ant arc. But aside from that, he doesn't really do much, which is why he's only impossible. Ponsu is going in very unlikely. She showcased enough abilities to warrant a moveset, but she doesn't really do much for the plot, and I don't think she's a very popular character. Finally, we have Illumi, who is unlikely. He's a Zoldyck, he's shown plenty of abilities, and he's very relevant to Killua's character arc. Now we're going to move on to the Zoldyck family arc. The first Zoldyck family member is going to be Zeno, who is very likely. We've seen his Nen abilities multiple times, and he's participated in not only the York New City arc, but also the Chimera Ant arc. Next is Silva, who is going in likely. He hasn't shown as many abilities as Zeno, but is just as relevant, which is why he's going 1 tier below. Both Kikyo and Maluki are going in impossible. They haven't shown any fighting prowess and aren't relevant enough to the plot to warrant the development of a moveset. Canary is going in unlikely. She's kind of fought before and is somewhat relevant. Finally, Godo is going impossible. He's a cool character and had a fight in the chairman election arc, but I don't think he's relevant nor popular enough to give him a very good chance. Next is the Heavens Arena arc. First is Wing, who is impossible. We know he's a good fighter because he taught Nen to Gon and Killua, but we've never actually seen him fight at all. So the plot relevance is there, but no fights or abilities are going to drag his chances down tremendously. Zushi is going in unlikely. He has fought before on screen, but it was very brief and he's arguably less important to the story than Wing. Next we have the contenders Sudoso, Guido, and Rielvelt, however the hell you pronounce that, who are all going in very unlikely. They do all have showcased fights and abilities, but the only purpose they serve is to be an introduction to Nen and then eventually become fodder. And I don't think there's anyone out there who actually likes these guys. Finally, for Heaven's Arena, we have Castro, who is unlikely. He had a cool fight with Hisoka and furthered the introduction of Nen types, but beyond that, he doesn't really do anything else. Now we have the York New City arc, which has a lot of characters. Let's start with the Nostrad family and bodyguards. Neon and Delzoline are both going in impossible. I'm going to mispronounce so many names throughout this video, but the last time I went through the Hunter x Hunter story was reading the manga, which means I didn't get to hear any of these names pronounced, so I have a reason to mispronounce these names, okay? They never showed any fighting prowess, so it just wouldn't make any sense. Squala, Shachimono, Base, and Basha are all going in very unlikely. While they all had on-screen fights, they never did enough to warrant their inclusion. Melody is the one bodyguard who gets unlikely because she plays a large role in helping Kurapika throughout the arc, but doesn't really have much fighting ability. Now we get to the Phantom Troop. The only guaranteed Phantom Troop member is Crollo. At least one Phantom Troop member is going to get in, and Crollo is the obvious pick. The only Phantom Troop member I'm giving very likely is Uvogin because of his fight with Kurapika. The rest of the Phantom Troop is going in likely. All of them have shown their abilities, but some are more geared towards fighting than others. I know I put the rest of them in likely, but I'd say Nobunaga, Phaeton, and Finks have the best chances of actually getting in. Finally, for York New City, Zepile is going in impossible. He's cool, but has never fought anyone and doesn't do enough to warrant a moveset. Now we're on to Greed Island. Our first character is going to be a guarantee, Bisky. This is because of her inclusion in Jump Force, but I also think there's going to be a small amount of female characters present, so Bisky would be a clear female choice. Next is Genthru, who is very likely. He was the main villain of Greed Island and has plenty of fights, so it just makes sense. His lackeys, Sub and Bara, are going in possible. They have the plot relevancy, but they don't have any unique abilities, so that's why we're going with the middle ground, which is possible. Says Gara and Abengane are also both going in possible. Says Gara has the plot relevance, but no unique abilities, whereas Abegane has unique abilities, but not enough plot relevancy. Goranu is going in likely. His Nen ability is unique and would be a good way to represent Nen beasts in game, and he also played a huge role in the dodgeball match. Razor is going in very likely. He's a fan favorite, he showcased his abilities, and he's a good antagonist during the Greed Island arc. Finally, Kaluto is going in likely, like the rest of the Phantom Troop. Now we have the Chimera Ant arc, which is going to include the most characters. First we have Meruem, who is guaranteed. There's no main villain in Hunter x Hunter, but if I had to choose one, it would be Meruem. Hence why he's guaranteed. The Chimera Ant Queen is going in impossible. I don't think I really need to explain there. Pito, like Meruem, is going in guaranteed. She's incredibly relevant to Goen's character and has had plenty of fights. I think it would be really weird if she wasn't included. Yuppie and Poof are both going in very likely. I'm pretty sure that all the Royal Guards will make it in. For the rest of the Chimera Ants, I'm going to rapid fire through them as most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Colt is very unlikely. Melorion is unlikely. Ikalgo is possible. Welfin is possible. Bloster is very unlikely. Lael is possible. Chitu is possible. Yunju is very unlikely. Zazan is possible. Pike is very unlikely. Boki is very unlikely. Rammet is unlikely. The Ortho siblings are impossible. And finally, Koala is very unlikely. Let's move on to the human characters of this arc. Kite is very likely. Cool abilities and incredibly relevant to the plot. Morel is also very likely for the same reasons. Nov is possible. He has the abilities and relevancy, but because of his state after infiltrating the castle, putting him in a fighting game might be kind of counterintuitive. Knuckle and Shoot are both going in likely, and finally Palm is going in possible. And for the final arc of the anime, we're going to cover the chairman election. I don't think this game would cover manga exclusive content, so we're going to stop at this arc. All of these Zodiacs aside from Periston and Jing are going in very unlikely. We just haven't seen them do anything. Jing and Periston are going in unlikely just because they're more relevant than the rest of the Zodiacs. Tsubone is unlikely, and Armane is very unlikely. No explanation needed there. And the final character is Aluka, who is impossible for obvious reasons. Now let's talk about a final roster. I decided to go with a safe number, going with 20 characters. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, Hisoka, Netero, Crollo, Bisky, Meruem, Pito, Leorio, Zeno, Uvogin, Genthru, Razor, Yuppie, Kite, Morel, Poof, Knuckle, and Illumi. And assuming there's DLC, I'd say all the Phantom Troop members that weren't included already: Silva, Shoot, and Goranu. Now of course, I could be completely wrong, but these are just my predictions, not necessarily the characters I want to get in. If I was completely in charge, I would have chosen a lot of different characters, but this is what I think is the most likely to happen. And of course, if you guys have any different ideas, then let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to read through them. And like always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.